Hey guys, what's up? Hope you're doing great today. Just in case you don't know this celebrity, my name is Victor Canchola, and this new project is basically the sibling channel to another channel I already run where I talk about these same kinds of topics but in Spanish. The whole idea behind this is to build a more diverse audience and hopefully take the best things from both worlds so I can keep improving the quality of the content. Now, we don't claim to have the absolute truth about anything here, but what we do want is to share our perspective on things and maybe give someone out there something useful they can actually apply to their own life. Today, I want to talk about a topic I'm really into, and that's how to win friends and influence people. The classic book by Dale Carnegie. Most of the ideas I'll be talking about come from that book. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe not, but the important part is that I'm gonna give my own interpretation of it and pull out practical advice you can actually use in your everyday life. Maybe you're thinking, why should I stick around until the end of the video? Uh, well, because the ability to deal with people and make friends is something we seriously underestimate. Most people overlook it completely. And through this series of videos, I want to help guide people who maybe struggle with that kind of stuff because trust me, I used to struggle with it too. Believe me, guys, I was terrible at talking to people, like genuinely awful. But at one point, somebody actually sat down with me and helped me step by step. And now I want to use this platform and wherever audience finds these videos to pass that knowledge forward instead of just keeping it to myself. Learning this stuff can help you meet new people, improve the relationships you already have, and even help in work or business situations too. Things like improving your work environment, getting promoted, closing deals, making sales if you're into that, and a bunch of other skills we'll be talking about along the way. Personally, this kind of knowledge has helped me improve my relationships with friends, family, and people close to me. So, yeah, let's get into it. This book I'm talking about includes references to historical events, research papers, and some really interesting studies spanning from around, let's say, 90 years ago all the way to today. So, honestly, I think it's worth reading or at least listening to as an audiobook for yourself. Okay, chapter 1 is called If You Want to Gather Honey, Don't Kick Over the Beehive. And to connect that idea with the title of the book itself, let's focus on the phrase influence people, because that's ultimately what we're trying to learn how to do here. But first, my friends, let's clear something up. A lot of people confuse influence with manipulation, and while the two can look similar on the surface, they are definitely not the same thing. Let's think about it this way. There are people who influence you or try to influence you in negative ways, people who push ideas that don't really add anything positive to your life and can actually end up hurting you. Negative people who constantly make you focus on the worst parts of the world and slowly damage your confidence in yourself and in others. But then there's the other side of the coin. There are people who are genuinely a good influence on you, people who want the best for you, who encourage you to make good decisions, think clearly, and become a better version of yourself. And honestly, my friends, that's what we want to be for people through this channel and through videos like this one. So, yeah, let's talk about how to actually become a positive influence in someone's life, although you probably already have an idea of where this is going. What we are really trying to do is get people to listen to what we say, but in a way where they can genuinely feel that what we're telling them comes from a good place and is actually for their benefit. Then you'll see that when people feel that, friendships start forming naturally, the relationship becomes more genuine, more comfortable, and things just flow way easier. At the same time, we need to avoid constantly criticizing, offending, or scolding people during the process because those things usually create the exact opposite effect of what we're trying to achieve. And let me explain what I mean by that. Okay, the reality is that when people make mistakes, most of them don't immediately admit they were wrong. In fact, human nature tends to push people toward justifying their actions so they can avoid feeling judged by others. Just think about it. Has someone ever hurt you or made a mistake that affected you personally, but instead of apologizing or admitting fault, they try to excuse what they did? I know there's a good chance you still remember that. So now let's take this idea to an extreme example. In How to Win Friends and Influence People, there's mention of interviews conducted with prison inmates across the United States. The interviewers spoke with a lot of these prisoners, and surprisingly, many of them believed they shouldn't even be there. Most blamed their situation on something else, like society, their environment, their circumstances, maybe other people, or anything besides themselves. The important point here is this: even people in those situations were still trying to justify their actions. And obviously, I don't want to generalize. The justice system can absolutely make mistakes, and there are definitely people in jail who don't deserve to be there. I'm fully aware of that. But what I'm trying to say is that avoiding blame and resisting responsibility is deeply rooted in human nature. And yeah, if people in extreme situations can justify their behavior, then what can we expect from regular people like you and me in everyday situations? I really hope I'm explaining this point well, but if I'm not, think about it like this. Remember when you were a kid and you accidentally broke something at your house, or I don't know, maybe your uncle's house or something, and the first thing you did was look around to see if anyone noticed? And when nobody did, you just act like nothing ever happened? Yeah, exactly like that. You and I both know it was your fault, and honestly, we're probably taking that secret to the grave, but don't worry, my guy, your secret's safe with me. Just like I said before, that reaction is part of human nature. Most people don't naturally respond well to criticism because when somebody points out our flaws or mistakes, it feels like our pride and our sense of importance are being attacked. So let me ask you something. Have you ever heard people say that humans learn better when good behavior is rewarded instead of constantly punished? Because honestly, that approach usually works way better than humiliating or scolding someone every time they make a mistake. Alright, science fact incoming. Between the 1930s and the 1950s, a scientist very well known in psychology named B.F. Skinner developed a concept that today we know as operant conditioning. Basically, the idea is that living beings tend to repeat or avoid behaviors depending on consequences that follow them. Now, what this dude did was create something called the Skinner box, which was designed for a series of experiments. Inside the box, there were buttons and levers connected to a food dispenser, and he also used things like lights and sounds to create a controlled environment. Then he placed lab rats inside the box to observe how they reinforce certain behaviors over time. So, eventually, these little rats would wander around the funny box completely at random, living their best lives, honestly, until accidentally pressing a button or pulling a lever and receiving food as a reward. What happened after a while was that their brains started associating that action with getting rewarded. And a little quick side note here, because this experiment also helped develop the idea of intermittent reinforcement. At first, the rats would press buttons consistently, but over time, they started losing interest in the activity, so the researchers changed the pattern. Sometimes the rats would get food, and sometimes they wouldn't. And weirdly enough, that uncertainty actually made the behavior stronger. The rats became anxious because they didn't know when the reward was coming, but also excited whenever it finally happened. This exact same principle is used in casino slot machines to keep people hooked. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't, and your brain keeps chasing that next reward. You can also see it on social media with likes, notifications, and reactions. And let's face it, some really manipulative people even use this kind of behavior pattern in relationships or friendships to keep people emotionally attached. So, yeah, that happens. Anyway, side note over. Now, getting back to the main point, let's connect everything we just talked about. What we learned is that positive reinforcement, whether it's praise, a reward, or even just a smile from someone approving of what we did, can be enough to encourage people to keep repeating good behavior. So now, the question becomes, how do we actually apply this in real life? Just to be clear, we are not trying to manipulate anybody here, alright? Stop rubbing your hands together like some supervillain thinking that your time has come, because that's not gonna happen. What we are really trying to do is avoid creating resistance and resentment in people, so that means not constantly scolding, humiliating, or calling people out if you actually want them to listen to you. Remember, judge not that you be not judged. Try practicing empathy. Put yourself in other people's shoes for a second. People don't think the way you think. They don't react the way you would react. Don't fool yourself into believing everybody sees the world the same way you do. And yeah, sometimes your patience will get tested, but even then, try to respond to other people's mistakes in the best way possible so you can guide them toward the behavior or action you actually want to encourage. I know I keep repeating this point, but it's important. People can hold grudges for years, so you probably don't want to be remembered as the person who embarrassed others or made them feel small. You want to be remembered as the person who helped others grow through patience, empathy, and understanding. Don't you forget that people are not purely logical creatures. Most of the time, we are driven by emotion. And to give this idea a little more depth, there's actually something in psychology called the fundamental attribution error. What it means is that we don't judge other people's mistakes with the same level of understanding that we judge our own mistakes. For example, you see someone showing up late to a meeting or an appointment, and immediately you think, they are irresponsible, they don't respect other people's time, these guys are always late. But what happens when you show up late? What happens is that suddenly there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. You normally never do this, something unexpected happened, my god, traffic was bad, you had a rough morning, and honestly, that's not even hypocrisy most of the time. It's just your brain naturally treating your own mistakes more gently than it treats everyone else's. So, once again, realize that people deserve a certain level of understanding. That's all. Think about it. The things you know today are things you didn't know yesterday. You've probably matured over time too. You likely act with more wisdom now than you did years ago. And I'm not saying you should completely ignore people's mistakes or pretend bad behavior is okay. No. What I'm saying is that people appreciate knowing you're willing to understand them instead of immediately attacking them. That's that's what I'm saying. So there you go. That's exactly why chapter 1 is called If You Want to Gather Honey, Don't Kick Over the Beehive. You starting to see how all these ideas connect? And before we end the video, I want to leave you with this. Anybody can criticize another person, but it takes real character and self control to be understanding toward others. And there's a quote I really like that says, a great man shows his greatness by the way he treats little men. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about for this first topic. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and comment whatever stood out to you the most, or even if you disagree with something I said, seriously tell me, we can talk about it respectfully in the comments like grown men. Also, guys, check out my social media. Right now, all my accounts are still in Spanish, but eventually I'll make separate ones for the English speaking side of the community too, so nobody feels left out. So take care of yourselves, keep doing well, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Bye bye.